Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to a time that might make you grateful for your mismatched socks and that takeout pizza from earlier. We're jumping into the daily life of a peasant in the Dark Ages. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this, but maybe we'll find a cozy corner in all this chaos together. Before you get too comfy, feel free to tap like or subscribe, but only if you're genuinely enjoying the calm around here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I love seeing how far this sleepy little journey reaches. Now, go ahead and lower the lights. Maybe let a fan hum in the background. And let's drift gently into tonight's story together. You wake up to the crowing of a rooster, not an alarm on your phone that you've already snoozed 5 times. The rooster's crow isn't exactly gentle. It's more like nature's megaphone yelling at the top of its lungs right next to your ear. The cozy bed you're used to is a mere fantasy here. Instead, you find yourself tangled in a pile of straw, which has decided to poke and prod you more effectively than any fancy memory foam mattress ever could. You're sharing your modest sleeping space with the whole family, animals included. Privacy? That's a luxury for future humans with their own rooms and Netflix accounts. The first battle of the day is against the chill that sneaks under your threadbare blanket. You can feel your toes curling instinctively, trying to find a non-existent warm pocket in what can only be described as an early medieval igloo. The single-room hut isn't great at keeping the cold out, quite like trying to insulate a room using just hope and good intentions. Once you're up, the cold floor sends shivers straight to your brain. Think of it as your caffeine boost for the morning. Now, your wardrobe choices come into play. Gone are the days of TikTok-inspired outfits, or wearing one thing only to change your mind 5 times. You reach for whatever scratchy burlap sack resembles clothing today. Fashion trends here are about as sparse as Wi-Fi signals in the middle of nowhere. With layers upon layers, you're more bundled up beanbag chair than graceful medieval peasant. Historians have noted that peasants' clothes were simple and made from wool or linen. The practicality here is clear: survival over style. You probably won't find any medieval fashion bloggers snapping pics in front of hay-covered houses. But on the bright side, you don't spend ages decoding cryptic laundry symbols or remembering which clothes need dry cleaning. As you set about getting ready for the day, you can't help but wonder, how did people manage with so little back then? Historians still argue whether peasants felt trapped in their conditions or accepted it as their way of life with minimal grumbling. It's a mystery whether they ever sat, looked around, and thought, maybe some indoor plumbing wouldn't be so bad. Honestly, the quirky part about these times is how many people genuinely believed in fantastical creatures that could impede their daily chores. Elves were thought to be sneaky and mischievous, much like that clingy remote that somehow disappears just when you sit on the couch. Imagine blaming a missing sock on a woodland sprite rather than that mysterious void your washing machine seems to have. As you finally prepare to brave the world outside, pause for a moment. Maybe, just maybe, the ice-cold draft in your cottage really is subdued by that crackling wood fire. But let's face it, we're all waiting for central heating to come around. You hesitate before stepping outside, almost as if someone will hand you a warm cup of coffee or a motivational podcast to start the day. But nope, it's just you, facing an uncaffeinated reality. Like those mornings you assure yourself you don't need a double-shot espresso, even though deep down, you really, really do. So, step outside, breathe in the crisp morning air. Not because it's refreshing, but because it's probably a lot colder than you expected. The Dark Ages have barely begun. You're expected to do what people in your part of history do best. Keep putting one shiver-prone foot in front of the other and hope you find something worth a chuckle by sundown. The morning air hits you like that blast of cold from an open refrigerator door, except there's no hope of finding last night's leftovers inside. You walk out into the pre-dawn light, mainly because that's the only time the chores can be started in order to fit everything in. Your first task: breakfast. Picture this. Instead of a steamy latte and an avocado toast, you're greeted by a bubbling cauldron of porridge. It's oatmeal in its most unadulterated, straightforward form. Sure, it's not the 14-sugar additive vanilla explosion coffee drink that you might crave, but it packs the energy punch you need. The typical breakfast of the medieval peasant isn't as varied as a modern cereal aisle. We're talking grains, the bread of life, quite literally. The humble porridge is to your day what a motivational quote is to someone slogging through emails at midnight, barely fulfilling, but unnervingly necessary. Occasionally, an egg or two might make its way into your bowl. That's a rare treat and cause for celebration, like finding an extra chicken nugget in the bottom of your takeout bag. As you take your bowl and make your way to a bench, wooden and splintery, offering about as much comfort as a school cafeteria chair you sat in for too long, the truth of the mealtime situation greets you. Meals are functional, consumed with little fanfare. You all eat together, everyone serving themselves with practiced grace from a shared pot, as if you're contestants in a show titled "Who Gets the Biggest Spoonful?" This communal moment isn't about forging connections, though. It's more about fueling up before the grind continues. You might wonder, how is it that people could even stomach the same monotonous meal day in, day out? Well, historians still argue whether they simply got used to it, or if it pivoted their creative minds towards finding ways to add a sprinkle of excitement to their dour dietary lifestyle. Imagine brainstorming the addition of herbs, or those rare, delightful bits of fruit. Spices? Forget it. That was reserved for folks with silk-lined purses. One odd notion circulating in medieval kitchens was the belief in the simple power of herbs. While they didn't imagine them as the kale hemp superfood shakes of today, there was this quirky idea that some plants could cure anything from a toothache to an upset stomach. And honestly, with the lack of modern meds, you'd gladly toss a handful of anything remotely promising into that pot to avoid another round of medieval doctoring. Breakfast finished, you brace yourself for what's next. A day of farming. This isn't the kind of farming you dabble in with a small patio herb garden or a hopeful attempt to keep succulents alive on a sunbeam in your apartment. No, this is hard. Non-stop tilling, sowing, and reaping. It's the kind of physical workouts that would make any modern fitness app submit to its knees, histrionically imploring why you do this. As you put on your well-worn boots, nothing like the sleek sneakers you wore just yesterday for a casual run, you venture out to the fields. These boots are made for walking, digging, and potentially surviving the attack of rogue roosters on the prowl for midday snacks. In the fields, manual labor takes on a whole new meaning, you and nature trying to coexist, each trying to outsmart the other while managing to squeeze out enough food to keep hunger at bay. The main historical backbone to all this is that, truly, peasants formed the economic bedrock of medieval society. Without them, the whole setup would collapse, sending nobles and knights scrambling for ways to refill their platters. You're not just tilling the land, you're quite literally fueling the entire medieval enterprise. But here's a fun twist. You do it without complaint, or perhaps just muttered ones under your breath, because grumbling publicly won't win you any favors in that tightly knit community. So much like scrolling through endless reels at 2% battery because you're in denial about having to charge your phone. You work because that's the daily norm. A strangely satisfying commonplace challenge, if only because it keeps the narrative moving. Remember, it's early. The sun is still just saying hello to the horizon, and you've got fields to conquer before most people have even thought about their first conference call of the day. Onward you go. The relentless certainty of a peasant in the Dark Ages. As your day in the fields unfurls, you find yourself shoulder deep in the earthy smell of damp soil mixed with the sweat of a long day's labor. There's a rhythm to it, like the gentle thud-thud of a distant drum that somehow reassures you things are moving along just as they should. Out here, your tools are simple: a wooden plow and your own 2 hands. Forget about precision equipment and GPS-guided harvesters. Your main technology is patience. The fields stretch out in all directions, like nature's very own infinity loop. Infinite in the sense that they go on until your legs finally convince your brain to shout, "Enough." And as you work, you can't help but appreciate the exercise in humility. Modern life feels like a game of optimization, setting 5 alarms and ignoring them all till you absolutely have to move. But here, it's about working in unison with the seasons, laboring when the sun dictates, plowing when the earth allows, and resting when there's simply nothing left to give. Historians have established that this farming lifestyle, while demanding, was perhaps as relentless as a live streaming marathon, connecting you to every other soul in your community who shares your sunrise to sunset toil. Imagine your little village as an early social network, minus the digital likes and cryptic statuses. Just tangible, earthy nods of understanding from one calloused hand to another. You've probably wondered why it takes so long to accomplish anything. After all, in an age where we binge watch a whole series overnight, isn't efficiency paramount? Yet historians still argue whether the slower pace of medieval life led to deeper satisfaction or merely unending exhaustion. Around midday, when the sun decides it's time to turn up the spotlight, you pause for a break. Lunch appears, not as a neatly packed bento box, but a hurriedly wrapped bundle. Surprise! It's more grains. Doesn't matter if it's baked into a flatbread or boiled anew, it's fuel that simply repeats the chorus of breakfast. Still, if you're lucky, it might come with a smattering of cheese, because cheese, even then, was a universal love language. Taking a break in the field is not leisurely. It's a moment snatched from the hourglass that measures your workday. You sit on the edge of the field. I imagine it's like finding a curb on a sunny street, inviting you to rest momentarily, grateful for the chance to pause, even if just for a heartbeat, and with no disposable wrappers or forgotten sandwich baggies calling upon future archaeologists to unravel. Well, theoretically, your connection to the land is all the more apparent. A quirky sidebar here. Some medieval folks truly believed that the land harbored its own kind of spirit or energy, significance and stories tied to each hill and grove, like your own autobiographical podcast, running alongside the narrative of working the land. The stories passed down through generations, enriching the soil just as much as any fertilizer could claim. as you rise again to begin the second phase of your work, pondering perhaps if anyone in history was able to convince the weather to work in their favor. You realize it's all a part of that big unsolved riddle. Historians still argue whether medieval weather patterns shaped human fate more than any king or pope ever could. It's something to muse over as you get back to digging, turning soil, and planting yet another hopeful row under an unpredictable sky. So, you grab your tools again and note that the warmth of the day has a gentle, sleepy quality to it now. It nudges you along, almost like a lullaby sung by the fields themselves. You and your fellow peasants slip back into the rhythm, no less determined, plowing and planting, with each and every seed representing a promise for tomorrow. You're immersed in a realm where the only thing that really matters is making it through today's end, with a little hope that tomorrow, perhaps, it'll rain just the right amount. There isn't much else. Just you, the earth, and the promise of another day tirelessly repeated under the watchful gaze of the clouds. The afternoon has an unhurried melody of its own, the soft rustling of leaves carried by a gentle breeze, the distant chatter of villagers weaving through the air like gossip in a coffee shop. Even the birds seem to join in, their songs chirping bright notes that momentarily lift the weight of the day from your shoulders. This is your symphony, an unplanned organic soundtrack that echoes the simplicity and repetition of your daily life. As you work, you can't help but notice nature playing its own version of reality TV. The clouds gather in dramatic clusters overhead, casting playful shadows across the land. Watching them is like tuning into the slow, episodic drama of an unwritten sky, filled with stories only the wind knows. Playful banter from fellow workers floats around you, the kind that makes you feel like you're sitting on a couch exchanging memes. Only now, your comrades are your neighbors, pulling weeds and cracking jokes about the Lord's latest misstep. One historical truth remains: these lords who govern your life often feel like figures plucked out of an ancient soap opera. Picture a nobleman asserting his power in a way that makes today's viral gaffes seem modest. Their whims dictate your duties, though sometimes it's hard not to imagine them as characters with misguided plots destined for medieval meme status. In medieval agriculture, we seldom consider its dependence not just on labor, but on rituals that seem ludicrous in hindsight. Did harvest incantations actually increase yield? Or were villagers just desperate to swing the odds in their favor, akin to how you would cross your fingers hoping to hit all green lights on the way to work? Historians still argue whether these rituals had heartfelt belief behind them, or were as self-conscious as tossing salt over your shoulder today, just in case. It's one of those debates that adds color and depth to our picture of the past, like trying to decide if the potato famine could have been sidestepped with a dash more community foresight. With evening drawing near, you collect your tools, each worn and weathered by countless days just like this one. They carry the tales of the harvests past, a comforting reminder that even when things seem tough, the earth persists. Your shadow grows longer under the slanting rays of the sun, throwing humble sketches of the labor done across the ground, like nature's sleepy nod to a day nearing its end. As you make your way back to the cottage, the familiar landscape welcomes your return. Different patches of field, every weed, each stone,